Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Bodak, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
So we first open up with Theodore and Hank returning home from work to the Great Ocean Dock. And at this point, everyone begins to notice the good jobs they're doing and think they're becoming very useful tugboats. On their way home, Hank suggests that they play in Cobequid Cove before dark, but Theodore is a little unsure. I don't know, folks. You want to take a guess where this is going to lead?
Now, Theodore did like going to Cobequid Cove, deep in the harbor. The water was warmer there and was always so nice and peaceful. But it wouldn't be very peaceful with Hank's loud rock counting. And he also knew they were supposed to be back before dark. "Come on, Theodore," said Hank. Hank kept charging ahead and then idling his engine to slow down until Theodore caught up with him. "It'll only take 18 minutes, he added. "Okay," replied Theodore at last. 18 minutes.
Yep, we all saw that coming. This is not going to go well. So anyway, when Theodore arrives at the cove, it's nearly dark and, well, there's no sign of Hank. Theodore knows he has to head home, but can't abandon his friend just in case he may be in trouble. He then decides to try and find Hank in this very unsettling-looking cove. And before I continue, I'll bet you all noticed that scary-looking wreck near the entrance, huh? Now, I've heard quite a number of people complain that really isn't appropriate for a children's show such as this. But ask yourselves this. How is that not okay, and this is?
"Oh, what's that?" murmured Rusty. But it was only the sounds of the lonely scrapyard. Diesels, silent and still, lined up on guard.
I rest my case. Anyway, Theodore continues to search on for Hank as he gets further and further into the cove, but has no luck. And as he gets deeper and deeper into the cove, things start to become a little more unsettling for the young tug.
"Hank? Hank?" he whispered, but there was no reply. "This is the worst place in the whole world," he yelled as loud as he could, but no one could hear him. And that made him feel even worse. His eyes followed the path of his light shining on the rocks. He saw a large, dark shape in the water just ahead. It looked just like a crocodile.
Caught up in moments like this and your eyes are bound to start playing tricks on you. I know what that feels like. And as luck wasn't bad enough for Theodore, what do you seriously think he runs into next?
"Oh no!" he cried. 111, 12, 11. It was Hank, and Theodore had backed right into him. "Hank," said Theodore, amazed. "Where have you been?" "Oh, hi, Theodore," replied Hank with a smile. "I've been counting rocks. There are lots of rocks in here." Well, Theodore didn't know what to do first. Feel happy that he hadn't hit a rock, or angry that what he thought was the rock was really Hank. But before he could decide, something really scary happened.
"Are these the sexual anomalies? Do I need to beat a blow? I've mastered my beat a blow skills."
No, we don't need to beat a blow anything. But there is something else Theodore and Hank can do at a time like this.
"Let's get out of here, Theodore!" shouted Hank. "Follow me, Hank!" yelled Theodore. The two zigged and zagged as fast as they could away from that sound. They were both heading for the narrow channel. They were going at top speed away from whatever that awful thing was in the dark and scary cove. They were going as fast as they could, and that rattled Hank's lifeboat free from its place. Off it fell, right into the water. but neither tugboat noticed.
Oh dear. I did say this wasn't going to end well. So the following day, the dispatcher is very stern with both tugs and, unfortunately, informs Hank that because of his missing lifeboat, he cannot do any work for the company. And as luck would have it again, the dispatcher had a bigger punishment in store for Theodore.
You will work double duty today and every day until Hank's lifeboat is found. You will start with George. Meet him at Cobequid Light. Proceed immediately. That is all. The dispatcher watched Theodore move away from his dock. And Theodore, he called, don't be late again like yesterday, or else you will remain in your dock as well.
Okay, wait a minute. Listen to this line for a second.
Until you find your lifeboat, Hank, you are to stay here in your dock. Is that clear?
If Hank needs to find his lifeboat in order to work again, why would you purposely keep him in his dock? And if he can't do it, how do you expect the other tugs to go and find it when they have their own work to do? Mr. Dispatcher, did you just two-face yourself? Whatever. Anyway, Theodore meets up with George to help move the cargo ship, but as it turns out, George doesn't need any help. Much to Theodore's pleasure, so now he can get away from the cove even sooner than he thought. But luck just isn't on Theodore's side once again, as now Pearl calls him into the cove.
He looked around very carefully, trembling inside. He started to remember some of the rocks in the water he had seen the night before, and the trees and the frightening shadows. But somehow, today, with the bright sun overhead, they didn't look quite so scary. Pearl was waiting for Theodore a little ways into the cove. Theodore realized that she was right beside the place where he thought he'd seen the crocodile, when he saw a big tree that had fallen into the cove. It was floating in the very place he'd seen the crocodile, but it wasn't there this morning. There was just this giant tree. Yes, Theodore, said Pearl. What were you going to tell me? Oh, nothing, replied Theodore. And then Pearl said, this tree could be dangerous for any small boats who come into this cove. Please tow it away. And remember, I know, don't be late. And then Pearl went off, leaving Theodore all by himself.
And with that being said, Theodore ties his tow rope onto the tree and is on his way when he spots Hank's lifeboat. Now that's a big relief. But hold on. The lifeboat can't be that easy to get. Can it?
But just as Theodore was about to get the lifeboat, it was the scary sound again. And this time, it seemed to be coming from Hank's lifeboat. Theodore was about to race away when he remembered Hank's sad face that morning when the dispatcher had told him to stay in his dock. He had to get that lifeboat. But then he also remembered the dispatcher's warning. Don't be late. He had to get back to his dock and out of the dark and scary cove as fast as he could. Hank's rowboat would just have to wait.
What? No! You can't just leave the lifeboat there. If God forbid something were to happen to it, then Hank can't work ever. That's a horrible decision on your part. Moving on, trying to finish this up. Theodore then begins to wonder if the tree really wasn't a crocodile. Maybe the scary sound wasn't so scary either. And of all things, the scary sound turns out to be this.
It was a bullfrog. A tiny bullfrog was making that big, huge sound. Imagine. Hello, little frog, called Theodore to the bullfrog, and the bullfrog answered back with another one of his croaks. Wait till Hank hears about you, said Theodore. And then he laughed and laughed. In fact, you could hear Theodore laughing all the way home to his dock.
And that concludes the Dark and Scary Cove. So this episode is pretty good for what it is. The plot itself is alright, with a couple of gripes here and there, but nothing too severe. I do, however, like the overall meaning of the story, that just because something looks scary, it doesn't necessarily mean it is. It's not perfect in any way, but it is a small improvement to what we had from the last episode. Now, being that our two main stars are Theodore and Hank, the way they were portrayed throughout this episode, I can kinda sympathize with them. I'm sure there's lots of us that know what it's like to be afraid of whatever may frighten us, whether from childhood or to this very day. Pulling back really quick where this fits timeline-wise, I think this happens somewhere maybe in the middle of Season 1. Given how Theodore and Hank supposedly have been doing all these different jobs in the harbor by this point, but we're only 3 episodes in. It's just a minor flaw, but overall, as I said, I think this episode is pretty good for what it is. It's not perfect, but it definitely is a small improvement. Up next is Phoduck the Vigilant.